And I know it's probably a difficult choice because it's a beautiful evening, and with Storm Matthew coming, we might have some rain in our future, so I know you want to take advantage of those nice evenings while we have them. But you're going to be glad that you made the choice to be here. It was about 3 years ago when I started coming to college nights for my son, who is now a freshman at George Mason University. And as a parent, he's our first, our oldest, we have 2 others. It was quite a journey as a parent. Our expectations were younger, and myself being in education, I thought I kind of knew and I had a leg up. But it really, truly was a journey. And what I did find is that although there was a lot of information, and some information wasn't specifically pertaining to us or our situation, the more conversations that I took part in, the more questions I asked, the more information I got, made me a better informed parent and actually a better educator. And I try to use those skills, experiences, and values when I deal with the students here at Midlothian, because I want them to make the best choice for themselves, because at the end, he did make the best choice for himself. He's having a great transition in his freshman year, and he's kind of off and running. And I wish that for all the students, and I wish that definitely for all the parents as you go through this experience. So again, thank you for giving of your time to come to college tonight, and I know you'll find it worth your time and beneficial. Catcher will be November 17, 18, and 19, right here in Midlothian Theater. Peter the Starcatcher is the prequel to Peter Pan. It's Midlothian's take on that story. So if you have the opportunity to come out, you need to see at least one performance in the Midlothian Theater. It's a fantastic theater program, and the students are highly involved and highly empowered, and it's really worth your time. So with that, I will turn it over to Maureen Martin, and I thank you again for coming out this evening.
Good evening. I'm Maureen Martin, and I'm the College and Career Center Coordinator here at Midlothian. Welcome to all of you. This is an informative evening, and you have a wealth of experience up here on the stage addressing the various pieces of the college admissions and funding process. Just a few reminders before we get started. The format of tonight's program is a short 8 to 10 minute panel presentation by each of our guests, followed by a question and answer period at the end. While each panelist will speak about the process generally, the questions can be either general in nature or specific to the individual institution or representative. And we'll conclude our evening around 8:30. Midlothian's GRASP representative Kathy Davis is here tonight as well. You saw her as you entered the auditorium. GRASP is a Richmond area, Richmond-based nonprofit which assists families with information about paying for college, including the FAFSA, which was available, as you probably know, as of October 1st. Ms. Davis has already begun her regular visits to Midlothian. She'll be in the Career Center on a regular basis, Wednesdays from 7:30 to 12:30 through April. As soon as I conclude these remarks, she'll say a few words about the resources that she and GRASP can provide. The annual college fair will be held at the Chesterfield Tech Center at the Holt Street facility, which is the old Clover Hill High School, if you haven't been there. And that'll be on Sunday, October 30th, from 4:30 to 6. And most of the folks here on the panel will probably be there as well. Approximately 100 colleges and military organizations are registered to attend. The list of attendees will be posted in the Career Center and on the counseling webpage as soon as they're available to us. Our financial aid workshop is scheduled for Tuesday, December 6th, again here at the high school. Ms. Belinda Hill, who is also one of tonight's panelists, will focus on the financial aid application and the awards process and cover any changes and troublesome questions related to the FAFSA. More information will come on this event later. And lastly, the Career Center and School Counseling Office compile a scholarship list each year with deadline and application information. This list, when it goes live, will be accessed on the College and Career Center webpage. And I think there will be a link also on the counseling website. So begin looking for these scholarships in the next few weeks. I think we have a few out there that have come in recently that we'll get up probably next week. Okay, and I do need to say a thank you to the Fine Arts Department and their student helpers who have made it possible for you to see and hear these folks on stage. So Kathy, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, I'm Kathy Davis. I'm the Midlothian High School GRASP representative. And as Ms. Martin said, what we do is we help students find the financial resources to continue their education beyond high school. And that's whether it's vocational school, technical school, community college, or a traditional four-year college. I've been in your shoes. I've put 2 kids through college. I know what that feels like. And you're going to hear a lot of great information tonight about financial aid, so I'm not going to spend any time talking about the details. But after tonight, as you go through the process, if you have questions, I'm available in the Career Center to answer those questions, whether it's about filling out the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, whether it's about what kind of questions you should be asking your school, whether it's what kind of scholarships you should look for and how to do that. I can cover all those things. I'm available in the Career Center here on Wednesdays from 7:30 to 12:30. Your student can make an appointment either by coming by the Career Center or tonight I have the notebook outside if any of y'all would like to set up an appointment. If your student is a senior, they've also received a card in their civics class and their government class to indicate whether they want to meet with me. If they've indicated yes on that card, I will be pulling them out of class to talk to them about financial aid. So there's a lot of different ways you can get in to see me. And let's see, if there's anything else I need to make sure I cover. I wanted to make sure you knew that several of you stopped at the table and said you weren't parents of a student at this school, but were from another school. We have GRASP advisors in every single high school in Central Virginia. So if you want to meet with a GRASP advisor at your school, contact the counseling office at your school and they can tell you how to get in touch with them and how to schedule an appointment, because we always work through the counseling departments at the school. So I look forward to working with you and your student. Thank you.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's panel. Firstly, we have Mr. David Lassane. He's the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Randolph-Macon. He'll lead off tonight's discussion with Where Can I Succeed? Choosing the Right College for Me. Next to him is Ms. Kelsey Bowles. She's the Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of Virginia, and she'll speak about how do I prepare for college, my high school record, AP and IB courses, ACT and SAT tests. Next to her is Mr. Carla Moore. She is connected with the admissions department. She's a senior admissions counselor at ODU, and she'll address kind of the nuts and bolts of the application and admissions process, navigating the admissions application and testing maze. And any of us who are parents know about that maze. It can be troubling. Financial aid, my ticket to college, will be addressed by Ms. Belinda Hill. She is next to Ms. Moore. And Ms. Hill is the Associate Director of Financial Aid at the University of Richmond. Ms. Julie Ranson is the Associate Vice President of Student Success from John Tyler Community College, and she'll talk about the range of resources that are available to us just down the road. Mr. Curtis Davidson, next to her, is the Director of Admissions Operations from Christopher Newport University, and he'll focus on considering outcomes as part of the overall college plan. And finally, Ms. Mildred Johnson from Virginia Tech, she is the Director of Undergraduate Admissions, will address the transition trail leaving high school and letting go. Thank you one and all for being here tonight, and thank you all especially. Mr. Lassane.
As long as I can see everything.
Yeah, I was going to shift this back.
Well, good evening. I'm David Lassane. I'm the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Randolph-Macon College in Ashland, Virginia. Since everybody's mentioned their children, I'm also the parent of twin daughters who were sophomores in college. So yes, I survived this. And my daughters, there were several occasions, parents where my daughters would say, Dad, it doesn't really work like that. I'm like, well, I've been doing this for over 25 years. I'm pretty sure it does. So parents, you don't know as much, but sometimes you gotta pull out your business card. Well, I've been asked to speak on, where can I succeed finding the right college for me. And I think it all starts with finding the right fit. And approaching this whole process as a quest for finding that right fit for me, not necessarily, what is the most selective college I can get into? What is the best school I can get into? Now, that right fit may be a great school, for sure, but there are a lot of great schools. And the best school is the one that you're a good match for. And so any match starts with two sides, right? And so the important, I think the most important side is the student. So students, you have to ask yourself some questions. What is important to you? What environment do I think I will be most successful in? Okay? And so it starts with that self-inventory. What are your passions? What are your interests? And really poke at those and not just assume that every school or a dream school is the one that's the perfect fit. So research that side, the most important side, yourself first. And then you'll want to look at what colleges have, what colleges are out there. Okay, so the different types of schools, size, shape, location, all the various things that hopefully matter to you and that you have an opinion on. And in this process, I encourage students for you to take the lead in that quest, in that search, in that gathering of information. Parents certainly can be helpful, counselors can be helpful, but you're the individual that's going to be having that experience in college. So take ownership of that, and I think you'll find that that you'll be more invested in your ultimate choice if you engage in the process. And it can also be very helpful developmentally. I would also encourage the students to not believe the hype, whether it comes from the college or from those around you. Colleges, we're very good. We all have great smiles, and we're great advocates of our schools. We are paid to do this. We all have U-books and promotional material, and in all those pictures, the sun is shining. Everybody's smiling. And there's, on all of our campuses, there's a tree where you'll find three diverse students and a faculty person under that tree. Bring a tree shot. You got to have it. Okay? So, understand that those are marketing materials, but they are truthful. Okay, and but understand that, and also understand that your parents may not be the best source of information because their perspective is a little bit dated. All right, I can say that as a parent. And I also say your friends, they know less than you, okay? And so don't get caught up in following the herd. Be your own advocate. Be yourself. And so I think that those are really important factors in that process of trying to find that fit. I'll also offer up to you what I found to be a very interesting study. This is done by Gallup, the survey organization. So it's called the Gallup, and they did this in Gallup Purdue Index. They did this in collaboration with Purdue University. And what they did was they surveyed 60,000 college graduates. Okay, that's a very large sample size. And they put them through a survey where they asked them about their college experiences, and they asked them about what they're doing now, and all about their life. And they developed an index. It wasn't just based on, I guess the outcome we often look towards is income. That was a question, that was a factor, but also a person's well-being. Are they happy in their life, in their career, in their community, their health, their overall well-being. And so they developed an index for that. And they also then asked about, what were your experiences in college? And then they looked for, what feelings and experiences about their college experience led to those successful outcomes, that good well-being. And there were 6 things that popped out. Okay? And they weren't things that a lot of us would think of, and none of it had to do with where a person went. The selectivity, relative selectivity of the college had no bearing on that ultimate outcome. Type of college, size of college, none of that had any impact. The things that impacted most were really around support and experience. And so if a person answered the question that they could highly agree with these 6 different questions. The first in the area of support. I had at least one professor who made me excited about learning. My professor cared about me as a person. I had a mentor who encouraged me to pursue my goals and dreams. Okay? And then in the area of experience, I worked on a project that took a semester or more to complete. I had an internship or job that allowed me to apply what I was learning in the classroom. Third, I was extremely active in extracurricular activities and organizations while attending college. Okay, each one of those questions had a 2x benefit. Okay, you were 2 times more likely to have that great well-being if you could answer yes to one of those. And then if you answered yes to all 6, then you were there. Okay, it's almost 90% chance that you would. The problem is when you find that great well-being. The problem is only 3% of students could, or people surveyed out of 60,000, could actually answer yes to all 6. Okay, so a number of those factors are things, and most of them are things that students control. So I would argue, and I think what this study, the outcome of it is that you're the most important variable. Okay, so it's the student who decides, yeah, I think I'm going to do that internship. Or you could say, a semester-long project, that sounds hard. I don't want to do that. All right, so a lot of this are factors that you control. And I would also contend that you're the most important factor in determining that fit. So if you can look for a school that might allow you to do those things that I mentioned, okay, that might allow you to have those experiences in the classroom, have that connection with professors, allow you to ease the opportunity for internships, for example. Maybe that's a place where you can be successful, okay, or have a great chance to be successful. All right, so ask the right questions of yourself and ask the right questions of the schools that you hope to attend. That's what I got, okay? So just remember, it's a quest for fit, not necessarily just where I get in. It's not trophy hunting, okay? It is where's the best fit for me.
The awkward transition, sorry.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, once again, my name is Kelsey Bolts, and I'm an assistant dean at UVA. I do not have any children, for the record, so I will not be talking about that, but I can talk in quite depth about getting into college. So, great talk about finding the right fit, finding the place that's a good place for you, that you're going to be happy being for the next 4 years, being happy being an alum of that institution. But once you find that fit, what's important is, how do I get into that school? This is the school I want to go to, how do I get in? There are many pieces of getting into college. Most schools utilize what we call a holistic review process, which means they take everything into account when you are applying to college. But I'm going to focus on 2 pieces of that holistic review, and that is going to be your academic record, so your transcript, and then your standardized testing. I think most would agree that your transcript is one of the most important pieces of your application, because that is where we're going to see how successful you've been in the classroom, and that is actually the best indicator as to how successful you'll be post-high school, is what you've done in the classroom while you're in high school and the classes that you've taken. And so really what's most important to most colleges when it comes to the review of your transcripts is the rigor of your curriculum and how well you've performed in that rigorous curriculum. Rigor of a curriculum is very particular to your high school. So I know that there are students from not just Midlothian, but other schools in the room, and every high school has different curriculums offered to them. There are schools that have AP, there are schools that have IB, there are schools that have dual enrollment, there are schools that have honors. There's a wide variety. And even if 2 schools offer AP, some may only offer 3 AP courses, while another school will offer 10 AP courses. It's not the number that your school offers that matters. What matters is whether or not you took advantage of those rigorous courses that are available to you. And so when you apply to a college, you're going to get your counselor to provide us with some information. One of those documents is going to be a school profile. And on that school profile, it will let us know the type of classes that are available to you. And so based off of that information, we'll be able to see whether or not you chose to challenge yourself in the classroom. And that's what's most important, is that you are going above and beyond and you're choosing courses that are going to kind of push you a little bit, that are going to make sure that you are growing academically, that you're challenging yourself while you're in high school. Every school has different requirements when it comes to the course load that they're looking for. Most schools are going to want you to continue in all of the main subject matters for all 4 years. So that's going to be your math, your science, your English, and your history. We understand that some things change. Maybe you're really great at math, so you max out at math your junior year and you can't take it your senior year. That's fine. There are unique circumstances for every single student. However, just because you're a senior and you get to have a free period doesn't mean you should necessarily take that free period. Maybe you should take a class that can continue to challenge you, or take a class in a subject matter that you might not be that comfortable in, because you're going to have a lot of fun when you're in college, but you need to get there first. And the way you get there is based on the things that you do while you're in high school. So you want to continue to challenge yourself all 4 years and not take your foot off the gas just because you're a senior year and you want to enjoy yourself. For the juniors in the room, this is a pretty important year for you academically, especially if you're going to apply to a school early action or early decision. Because if you're going to apply to a school early, they're not going to see any of your senior year grades. They're only going to see 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And typically in 11th grade, that's when you start taking those more rigorous curriculums. That's when you start taking more AP or your IB curriculum starts. And so there's no pressure junior year, but keep that in mind. When you're applying early action and early decision, really a lot of schools are going to put a lot of emphasis in your junior year grades, because that's going to be the only thing that we have, and that's going to be the best indicator as how you're performing in those particular upper level courses. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the transcript. Make sure that you're taking a rigorous curriculum, you're doing well in that rigorous curriculum. Some schools rank, some schools don't rank. Every school has different GPAs. Don't get too wrapped up in the numbers. Think more so about how you're performing in the classroom at your particular school, and just do the best you can while you're in that particular class, and we'll figure everything else out. We'll figure out how you're performing and how that is an indication of what you're doing at your particular school. Next up is going to be your standardized testing. Most schools are going to put more emphasis on your transcripts than your standardized testing, just because studies show that transcripts are better indicators as to how successful you'll be in college as opposed to standardized testing. Also, where you know that you've been in high school for 4 years versus you taking a test one Saturday. We're aware of those things. However, you still want to prepare for them. You still want to do well on them, because for a lot of schools, scholarships can be based upon your standardized testing. And so it's important that you either take a prep class if you can, or buy a prep book, or do something to make sure that you're adequately preparing yourself for either the SAT or the ACT. So when it comes to standardized testing, schools are going to either require one of those or either one, depending on the school. Some schools require the writing section, some schools don't, and so you want to keep that in mind when it comes to the schools that you're applying to make sure that you're getting in everything that you need to get in. Some schools require subject tests, some schools don't require subject tests. I will say that if a school says it's highly recommended that you submit subject tests, you should probably take that subject test. That's just a little bit of a hint. Try and take it if you can and submit those scores. But for the most part, if they don't require it, it's not necessary in order to get into that particular school. In case you don't know what a subject test is, it is a test that is specific to a particular subject. So either it's a history subject test, or a math subject test, or a foreign language subject test. and it's done through the SAT the way you would sign up for the SAT, but it's just in a particular subject matter that you can then send to different schools. When it comes to the scores that you should send, some schools will super score, some schools won't super score. Super scoring means that they take the best of each individual section, so you want to make sure that you're sending them the right scores. And then, once again, different schools put different emphasis on their standardized testing based on whether or not they'll use that to consider you for a scholarship. So you do want to keep that in mind when it comes to being in a certain range for particular scholarships. If a school gives you a middle 50%, so they don't give you an average SAT or ACT score, instead what they say is the middle 50% of our students score between a 650 and a 710 or whatever that school's particular scores are. That means a quarter of their students come in above that middle 50%, but a quarter of their students come in below that middle 50%. So just because you're not hitting that middle 50 doesn't mean you won't be a competitive applicant, doesn't mean that you won't get into the school, just means that you're not hitting what the middle percent of the students that are applying are going to have. And then I know the major concern for the seniors in the room is the old SAT versus the new SAT. Every senior in America is going through this same thing. So it's not unique to you, it's not unique to your family. Every single senior in the United States is having this issue with the new SAT versus the old SAT. What scores are you looking for? What if I don't perform as well on it? Don't worry about that. That's just going to make you anxious. That's going to make you not perform as well on the test. Let us worry about that. That's what we do. We're going to look at those scores. We're going to see how the national trends, we're going to see how they're going to compare to old testing, and we're going to make those decisions about the testing that we're typically going to be looking for. But it's not going to be the end of the world. It's just a new test. It's happened before, and everything has been fine. Something that you do want to check on, though, is whether or not the schools that you're applying to are going to accept the new and the old SAT, or if they're only going to accept the new SAT. Because if they're only going to accept the new SAT, you need to go ahead and sign up and hurry up and take it so that way you can get in for those testings. Once again, some schools are okay for the seniors submitting old or new, but some schools are sticking strictly to the new SAT. And once again, just be on top of those different details so that way you can make sure that you're adequately prepared for the things that that particular school is looking for. That's it.
All right, thank you, Kelsey and David. I will take the mic next, the awkward transition. I will take the mic next. My name is Takarla Moore. I'm the Senior Admissions Counselor in the Undergraduate Office of Admissions at Old Dominion University, located in Norfolk, so thank you for joining me. I'm going to kind of wrap up and tie into effect both what David and Kelsey had to say as I go over navigating the admissions process, the testing maze, etc. Definitely as you're navigating this maze, you want to definitely form some sort of a list of schools you're even interested in. David pointed out a good point about doing that research and making sure you pick a good fit. A lot of that starts with going and just narrowing down, where am I even thinking about applying? Is it going to be 5 schools, 10 schools, 2 schools? What are my options? And as you're doing that, you might want to keep, for example, some families may keep a spreadsheet or some sort of document of these are the schools, these are the locations, these are the sizes, these are the requirements for those schools. That way you're organized and you have some sort of flow in the way that you're applying and thinking about applying to all of the schools that you have choices of. As you're doing that, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to deadlines. Each of us up here probably has a different deadline. Not one school is equal to another in terms of exactly when they may want all of your documents. And so as you're navigating, you're going to want to pay attention to, as Kelsey was saying, the early action schools versus the early decision schools. You're also going to want to know, when is the latest that you could submit an application just in case, or when did the application open? Many schools are part of what's called the Common Application, and that application actually opens in August. So that's an opportunity for you to go in and apply to many schools without having to do each individual separate application. However, there are some schools that only have their own, and so you'll want to know those differences as you're picking and choosing what schools to apply to. Also, just to piggyback a little bit on the early action and early decision, early action is non-binding. So that is a decision in which you are not bound or obligated or committed to that school just because you've received a decision early. However, early decision is binding. So you want to make sure that if you are applying to an early decision school, you're aware of that and that you know what the implications are towards applying anywhere else. So that's something that's very important when you're thinking about deadlines and should I put this application in early or take advantage of the regular admission that goes with that. In terms of navigating the process with admissions, colleges like to see well-rounded applicants. All of us up here will probably tell you academic rigor, of course, is something we look for, but we're also looking for students who are both scholars in the classroom and still involved outside of the classroom as well. Being able to balance and navigate being a scholar and still being maybe a volunteer or a student athlete or in the band or the orchestra or the arts or whatever it is that you do shows that you can balance both your academics and your social and activities. And so that would make you a good fit or a competitive applicant when you're looking at colleges and deciding which colleges to apply for. In terms of testing options, colleges have either SAT or ACT. So those are your two options for standardized testing. I will go into a little bit of the differences in which you can apply with those tests. A lot of schools that you may look at may be what's called test optional. Test optional meaning that if you have a particular GPA, you do not have to submit test scores for admission. So that's something that you'll want to pay attention to. Is this school test optional or is it mandatory that I provide them with a test score? And that's definitely something that will play into effect when you're applying. With your testing, you definitely want to test more than once. I highly stress for juniors in the room, go ahead and try that SAT, that new one that just came out. That way you can see what it is you might have to work on or retest on for the future. For seniors, if you've tested maybe once in your junior year, it wouldn't hurt to do once in your senior year. Or if you have the time for twice, or if you've done an SAT, maybe an ACT. There are different options that you can give yourself so that colleges have a variety of different scores to look at, and if they need to super score, there's more than just one score there. Also, that may mean the difference in you obtaining a merit scholarship or even being considered based on when did you submit your scores and how many different ones did you submit. So you definitely want to keep that into consideration. Lastly, I want to tie up the piece on connecting with campuses and just connecting with admissions and making sure that a campus is going to be home. You definitely want to take time to visit. That is something I stress to everyone. It doesn't matter if it's a tiny private school, a big state school. You think you know it, but you don't really know it until you've put your feet on the ground in the city that school sits in. So that's something I highly stress. Campus visits don't always have to be the traditional show up for a campus tour, hear the information session. For example, at Old Dominion, we do some unique things. We invite people in for basketball games. You're in the Ted Constant Center in the box seating, intermingling with us and watching a game. Or we have a First Fridays program for engineering where you come in on a Friday and it's a specific engineering open house. So there are some unique things you can do outside of just the run-of-the-mill visit or an open house. There's some other unique opportunities. Also, I recommend going in and maybe making connections with your admissions counselor or with your contact person or representative for your school. That way you have FaceTime with them and they get to know you. We're happy to walk you around campus, talk with you one-on-one. There's different ways that you can make a campus connection, and that's very important in solidifying if that place will be home. And so I encourage you all to do all of those things as we move along through this process. Thank you.
Well, that wasn't too bad, that transition. I'm Belinda Hill with the University of Richmond. I'm an Associate Director of Financial Aid there. I'm also a Chesterfield County parent, so I've been in your place not so long ago. I have one out of college and I have one that's a sophomore in college. And all I can tell you is you will survive the financial aid process. Okay? It can be difficult, but you need just put the time into it because you never know what the outcome is going to be. A lot of parents will think, I don't want to do the financial aid application, it's too complicated, there's too many questions. But a financial aid application, that is like an umbrella. It's going to encompass a lot of different things. Ideally, we want all of our students to get the free money that you don't have to pay back. But not every student can get free money. But the financial aid applications at the school will help them to determine what monies they can give your child, whether it's for financial need, for a student loan. They're often used to determine if your child can do federal work study on campus. Some outside organizations require that your student do a financial aid application in order to be considered for an outside scholarship from, say, a Rotary Club or a church and that. So really, financial aid is a big umbrella that encompasses a lot of these different things. And so you've heard earlier tonight about the FAFSA form, the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. In the past, if some of you have gone through this before, the FAFSA was available starting January 1st of every year. Well, effective with this year, that date has been changed to October 1st. So the FAFSA for the 2017-18 school year went live this past Saturday. So right now, if your child will be entering college in fall of 2017, you can do your FAFSA form right now. Another thing that has changed is in the past, when you filled out the FAFSA form, you used the income from the prior year. Starting effective with this year, you're going to use what's called prior year. I love that term. We all love that term. In financial aid, they tried to call it PPY, and we're like, that doesn't sound too good. So if you went to do the FAFSA today for the 2017-18 school year, what that means is the income taxes that you're going to use are your 2015 income taxes, the ones you've already done. So this will help parents not have to rush through their taxes or try to get an accountant to do them very quickly and all of that for their students. So you will use your 2015 taxes, and because you've already done them, hopefully, and you don't have that extension until October 31st, you can use something, a really nifty tool called the IRS data retrieval tool. And when you complete the FAFSA, you get to the point where you have to put in your income information and your taxes paid and all of that information from your tax form. If you do that data retrieval tool, it pulls everything from your taxes and dumps it into the FAFSA for you. I've used it. It's fantastic. It is just, you don't have to key in multiple lines of numbers and that. So that's wonderful if you can do that. But do the FAFSA. Every school that gets federal aid will require the FAFSA to be considered for financial aid. So you want to do that as soon as you want to get going on this. You're a student, and you can list at least 10 schools, 12 schools, 10 to 12 schools on the FAFSA, which means that information will be electronically sent to schools. So even if your student is not sure if they're applying to a particular school, you can do the FAFSA and then go in later and add schools to that. So if you want to go ahead and get it out of the way. The FAFSA is the form that you're going to hear the most about because every school that gets federal aid is going to require that form. But you also need to be aware of what else that school might require for aid. Some schools use something called the CSS profile through the College Board. A lot of private schools use that, and some of the larger publics do. It's very similar to FAFSA, but you will not be eligible for federal aid with just that form. To be eligible for federal loans and federal work study and other federal grants, you have to do the FAFSA. But if your child is applying to a school that requires the profile in addition to the FAFSA, you need to complete that as well. You also need to be aware that some schools have their own scholarship applications and that, so that might be another form. So your best bet and your student's best bet, and I'm saying both of you because financial aid is actually the two of you guys together, is that check each school's website, find out what is required, find out what the deadlines for financial aid are, because the financial aid deadline may not be the same as the admission deadline. So you really need to double check those dates and that. Also, if your child's applying early decision or early action, the school might have a different financial aid date for an early action or an early decision student and that. So become very familiar with the financial aid pages for each particular school that your child is applying to. Now you may wonder, do I even need to bother? Is there a cutoff? We get that question all the time. How much money can I make and still get financial aid? We cannot answer that question for you. No financial aid person can. The most that we can say is, if you have no money, literally no money, you could get some financial aid. If you're a millionaire, you're not going to get financial aid. But unfortunately, most of our parents at every school are in the middle. And that. I encourage you to do at least the FAFSA form one time to at least get an idea of, is this really worth our time to do this every year? Another thing to consider is when you complete the FAFSA form, for example, and your child is applying to very different schools, small public, large public, small private, large private, out-of-state schools, the information is going to be the same at each school, but the cost at each school could be different. So it might be that your student doesn't get aid at a particular school, they may get a large amount of aid at a different school because the cost is different. And schools will take that into consideration when they're looking at your financial aid information. If your child's going out of state, they're going to say, oh, well, they're going to pay out-of-state tuition. They have a higher cost of attendance. So don't be discouraged if you don't get aid from a particular school, because you could get aid from a different school. As I said, I have a son that's a sophomore, and we applied for aid at all his schools, and it was very interesting to see the different types of packages that he got before he made his decision what school he was going to attend. Another thing to keep in mind is things like athletic aid or merit aid. A lot of schools have special things you have to do for that. You know, it's not just a matter of doing a financial aid application. It may be that if your student is interested in the arts, they might have to submit a portfolio to be considered for an art scholarship at that school. Again, referring back to the financial aid pages to know what is required for that. It's very important to meet deadlines for financial aid because some schools have very limited budgets and they may not be able to accept applications that come in after the deadline for that. Another thing to keep in mind, if you really are not sure whether a particular school is a financial option for you, every school is required to have something called a net price calculator on their website. Most schools will call it a net price calculator. Sometimes they try to give it a different name, like the calculate your cost calculator, or you know, how much will it come to go, you know, cost to go here, or something like that. But the net price calculator is where you can plug in your information and it will give you an estimate of what financial aid you might get from that particular school. Keep in mind, though, that these net price calculators are only as good as the information you put in there, and it is an estimate. You cannot take that printout and hand it to the school and say, well, the net price calculator says you're going to give me $20,000 worth of aid. And that it's just an estimate, but it will give you an idea of, is there any way we could possibly go to this particular school? And that. So I encourage the students to go out and try this. And again, every school is required by federal regulations to have one of these on their website. And so it's either going to be on the financial aid page, or sometimes it might even be up closer to one of the first pages that you look at when you visit a website for that. Another thing that I want to bring up is that it's very, very important to make this decision. I know money is not something that families typically like to discuss with one another, but for the students that are out there and for the parents that are out there, this needs to be a decision that you talk about as a family. I've been in financial aid for 22 years, and more times than I want to remember, I've had situations where families have come in, they've made the wrong decision based on their finances, and the student is at school and they cannot afford to stay and that. So this is something that needs to be a family decision. When you get all your admissions accepts in and you get your financial aid information in, you need to sit down at that kitchen table and have a conversation. There may be tears, there may be yelling, but you need to discuss this as a family so that you make the right decision. And again, it needs to be the right fit for the family, financially as well as academically for the student.
I'm Julie Ransom. I am at John Tyler Community College. I believe my topic is Virginia's community colleges where opportunities begin. So I will talk broadly about community college, and I'm sure I'll throw in a couple of examples from Tyler as well. I've been there for going on 13 years. I have 3 children on the follow-up team. All 3 of them have taken classes at John Tyler. 2 of them have degrees, and one of them is going to go to U of R later, eventually. So, and my baby graduated recently from a university. So, community colleges, I think the topic of where opportunities begin talks about how community college really can be a launching pad for students, regardless of their age. We often have non-traditional age students at community colleges, but students can launch from community college into a 4-year through transfer. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Or they can launch straight into a career through maybe our technical programs or our special industry certifications and things that we offer. So let me just kind of start. And to piggyback on what Belinda just said about the cost of college, I'm sure that you all know that community colleges in Virginia cost about 1/3 of the tuition of a 4-year school. I calculated for 12 credits, and the tuition varies between some of the community colleges of regional differences. At Tyler, it's $1,704 for 12 credits. That's considered a full load for financial aid purposes. When I went to college, a full load was 15 credits. Anyway, so it is a bit of a bargain. And obviously, there's still textbooks, but there's no room and board because we do not have dormitories. Staying on the financial side, though, I will say that we also have a foundation, and we raise a lot of money from the community. And this past September, we had a banquet to celebrate this year's scholarship recipients. We gave out over 150 scholarships, and it totaled over $267,000. The average award was about $1,700, and we had some students one of my neighbors even got over $3,000 scholarship for this year. So some of the things that are about the launching pad for students. So I think most of you probably know that we have guaranteed admissions agreements. Those are broad agreements with about 35 institutions in the state of Virginia. They are public and private institutions, and they allow students to enter into that institution. They may not get into the school of their choice, a college or the School of Engineering, but they can get into the actual institution and then meet the other bar of getting into the specific discipline that they want to follow. We also have specific articulation agreements, which articulate a student from a major at the community college to a specific major at a 4-year school. Most of those requirements are that the students have to complete and graduate with their 2-year degree. Some of the articulation agreements allow students to have a little bit lower GPA sometimes than they might get if they might be required to if they just apply straight into the university. Research shows that students who complete a 2-year degree are more likely to complete a 4-year degree. And so 4-year schools really like students who have taken and followed an Associate of Science degree. So some of the things that students don't know necessarily about community colleges is that typically we have small classes. They are 25 to 30. We have an occasional humanities course that may have 35 or 40. The classes are pretty small. I went to VCU and I took biology my junior year, I think, and I think there were 200 people in the class. That was a long time ago. They're probably bigger and some are smaller. Students, when they get put in a major, they're assigned a faculty advisor, and that faculty advisor can meet with them whenever they want. And they are usually people who teach in the discipline, or they have worked in the industry where the student wants to work, so they can give them very meaningful, timely, technical advice. We also train our faculty advisors so they stay up on, including bringing in 4-year institutions to talk to them so they can help students seamlessly transfer to 4 years. Some other things about 2-year schools is that a lot of our students think that you come to class, you park in the parking lot, we call them PCPs, you park in the parking lot, you go to class, you get back in your car and leave, because we aren't residential. But it is really important for students to have a student life, and so I know at John Tyler we have a lot of activities that go on. We bring on a lot of four-year schools, we do on-site admissions with them. But this Friday night at John Tyler, we're having family movie night, and faculty and students can bring their children, and we're having a double feature, Finding Dory and Finding Nemo. So there's all kinds of fun stuff like that that's going on. We have over 30 clubs. Most of community colleges have at least 30 or more clubs, and students can start any club that they want if they want to start one really young. Obviously, we offer a lot of courses that are online. We have degrees across the Commonwealth that students can complete entirely online. The last thing I'll talk about briefly is our technical programs. So we do have a lot of programs that are traditionally non-transfer. Some of them do transfer ultimately, but not all of them do. And so we have a lot of technical programs. All of the community colleges in Virginia have technical programs that tend to reflect the area where they are. So if the word community in the community college, it really just means that our programs typically reflect the community where we live. So one school may have heavy IT, say Northern Virginia Community College, because there's so much IT up there. Whereas around here we have some manufacturing, we do social work, there's a lot of those kinds of jobs. And so most community colleges don't actually start a program unless they can prove and demonstrate to our accrediting agency that we actually have jobs that students can get when they graduate with that program. Some of the technical programs aren't 2 years at all. Some of them only take a semester to complete, some of them take a year. So students can get out, come to school and go work in industry pretty quickly if that's what they want to do. We have some career study certificates that are under 29 credits. Some of them are 16 credits. And they can lead straight into a job. Those programs are typically overseen by a technical advisory board. And that means that employers from the area serve on that board and they make sure that the curriculum is relevant and every day. And they often provide great job opportunities and internships to students because they know our programs and they know our faculty are devoted to those curricula. And so they're happy to hire students. I mentioned industry certifications. This is an area that we're actually growing, looking at certifications across the Commonwealth. It is a VCCS initiative to ensure that we are allowing students to get industry certifications that are embedded in the courses that they're taking. The one last thing I want to say, and I don't think she's here anymore, but there was a mom in here and she actually works at John Tyler, and today she said, students need to know that John Tyler and all community colleges are actually more rigorous than high school. And it isn't grades 13 and 14. You will work hard, just like you would at a university, or say you wouldn't have the articulation agreements with us that they do. They know that you come prepared to them. And with that, I will close. Thanks.
Good evening. My topic is the college outcome, and my colleagues across the panel did a great job of beginning to talk about outcomes, but I want to talk about you've done your college search, you found the right fit. You heard my panelists talk about fit and the right choice. You sat down and had a conversation about financial aid. You cried, you hugged. Okay, it's going to work. And you've been admitted, and you made your choice. The dictionary defines, in dictionary.com, first site I found, a final product or end result, a consequence or an issue. And number two is a conclusion reached through a process of logical thinking. Okay? And so therein lies that you should have an idea about the outcomes that you hope to gain from your experience. Now, you made your choice. I would say those outcomes and an idea of what you hope to gain starts right away. If you haven't visited, again, I can't stress enough about visiting, whether you're going to a basketball game or an admitted freshman day or an overnight, you're going to invest in that outcome because you really, really have to really understand you've chosen that school through a deliberate process. It's going to be a good fit. Most schools will give you until, almost all of them will give you until May 1st to pay a deposit or at least make a commitment that you plan to enroll. And that's typically the universal date in which most schools adhere to. From there, I think your outcomes begin in your transition. The biggest thing I would say to you is you've worked hard, you've taken that rigorous curriculum, you've prepared. Do not be the person in July to get the skinny letter in the mail. Okay, my colleague talked about if you apply early, we only see your first 3 years of coursework. And you're admitted in some cases based on 3 years. But guess what we do see? We see at mid-year your first semester of your senior year. We make admission decisions based on that first semester, if you're applying late, a regular decision. But we really, really see your final transcript. In fact, you can't enroll unless we receive a final transcript. One of the toughest things I do in my job, I chair the admission committee, is I get to send the skinny letter. It's not pretty, it's a window envelope, okay? And you don't want to be the person to get the letter asking you to explain why you're not performing your very best. So the first outcome is to perform at your very best. Finish strong. You worked hard, so finish strong. That's going to continue for you to, I guess what I want to say is you're going to carry those habits over of working hard. My colleague is exactly right. A big difference between high school and college is you're sitting next to people who prepared. There's no one taking a nap in the back, all right? Your professors are highly trained, they're skillful. Their job is to engage you, to help you in your experience. And so continue to work hard. During your transition, you're going to go to orientation. And orientation is meant to be a further introduction, but it's really meant to be a transition. So what you're going to find is you're going to transition from these beautiful, nice admission people, okay, who are going to help, and we want you to come, and you're going to transition, to our colleagues, and they want you to be successful. So take advantage of orientation. There's all kinds of workshops on student success, how to manage your time, how to budget your time. Almost every school you'll choose has an academic support structure. They have an advising structure. Some have advising structures where it's an advising center. They're highly trained professionals. Some are faculty-based. You're going to be getting that transition. Again, outcomes seems like the end, but I would challenge you to take incremental approaches. You're going to work with someone, they're going to help you build a schedule. Put the work in. It's not going to be easy all the time. My colleague Dave said, yeah, that tree, and there's always leaves day. It's in the fall, right, Dave? It's in the fall. And leaves are turning, they're orange and maroon, right? Yeah, I know. But here's something that schools won't. I'll tell you this. It's going to be challenging in the classroom. But guess what, folks? You prepared. You can do it. Typically, the good stuff in life, the really good stuff, you got to work for it. Right, parents? Raise your hand. Got to get amen or something. But the colleges admitted you because of your potential for growth. And so you have to put the work in. Also, colleges, just like they have writing centers and advising centers, they have career planning centers. From day one, you can go in as a freshman and begin to engage in things preparing for when you leave college. And you can investigate those resources, parents, now. Terrific websites. So they'll help you build a resume. They help you build a real a real LinkedIn page, okay, or tell you to watch out with your social media, okay? They do mock interviews, help you build a resume. If you want to get real experience, some have internships or perhaps study abroad. So schools have terrific programs that will shape your outcome as you transition. And so investigate those. And I would say, as you're looking and trying to choose the right fit for you, perhaps some of those services or things those schools offer and the level and depth and the expertise, that might factor into your decision. But they're all there, and they do a terrific job. And their job is to make sure to support you that you're successful. But you got to do the work. There's no sugarcoating. Professors won't call you and say, hey, I missed you at class. You've got to get out. You've got to have a plan. And if you have a plan and you put the work in, I think your outcomes will be good. The search is about you. There's so many terrific options, public, private, large, small, community college, technical college, you're terrific. And so I would I take a realist approach. And you've got to put the work in. You've got to invest the time and the energy, just like you've done now. You've worked hard. You've been methodical with your course selection. In addition to career planning and all those services, beyond the classroom, will help prepare you as well. So take advantage of those clubs and opportunities, not just for fun, but all those organizations have presidents and vice presidents and planning committees. That's real good life experience that could impact your outcome and impact your experience. So I would just say it's your process. My colleagues nailed almost all of the things that are very, very important. But I would just say it's about you and the work you put in, which I think will greatly shape your outcomes. Thanks.
I thought that would have been easier.
That was not a good transition.
Oh, get your glasses, isn't it? Let's see. Okay, let's have a little fun. It's exciting to be with you. And not so very long ago, I was sitting your side of the other side of the desk. It's hard when you've got kids that are going through the process and your mother does what I do. But my journey started many, many years ago. I've been in college admissions now. This is my 41st year. So I started when I was 10. But I had 2 daughters, continuing the theme that did through the process. And I used to tell my girls, be something I can go to when I get old. Doctor, lawyer, that works. And my oldest graduated from the Fashion Institute in New York City, and she went to work for Kate Spade. That was way better than being a doctor. Yes. And now she works for ABC Carpet and Home, so now I get discounts on the rugs. It goes full circle. And my youngest is a 4th-year nursing student at the University of Virginia, so she's going to take care of me in my old age. So I know parents, you're tense, you're worried about this, but let me ask you, students, how many of you want to go away to school? Parents, how many of you want them to go away? I'll say 100%. Okay, another question. How many of you parents, this is the first child you've sent away to school? Raise your hands. Okay, therapy at 9. Okay. It's not that stressful. No, it can be stressful. And this is why we're here tonight, to really kind of demystify the process for you. But this kind of transition about letting go started many, many years ago. When your kids are born. Remember kindergarten and walking across the street and all of a sudden, they want to run. You say, no, hold my hand. And they say, no, I can go. And they're off. And then all the trials and tribulations of middle school. And then do you remember when they got their driver's license? That was scary. I wouldn't let my husband teach my kids, but, I thought, I can do this. And then the day that my oldest drove off with my youngest, that's a transition because you get nervous about that. All of a sudden there's 2 kids in a car by themselves. And then fast forward to high school and you've got prom And I remember my daughter saying, oh, well, I'll see you in the morning. In the morning, you know, in prom like till midnight. Yes, but then there's the after prom, and I don't know how many parties are after that until breakfast. But all of those things, parents, it's transitioning you to help your students go off to college and really helping learn to communicate with them differently and help them make decisions, because in a very short period of time, they're going to be making those decisions on their own. And so whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. And you want it to happen. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is help your students learn to make those decisions now. And so I'm going to give you students and parents a couple of little pearls of wisdom. So for students, to help this transition go a little bit easier, when you get to college, go to class. That's a novel idea. It is important. And you know, I say that because this is a huge investment. And not only time, but money. And so parents, I think there should be an academic expectation for your sons and daughters when they get to college. So talk about that. You know, we've talked about a lot of other things, but sit down and say, this is my expectation. I want you to do it all and do it all well. But students, you've got to budget time. How many of you feel like you're the best time manager? Well, that's not good. Okay, I'm going to work on that one. So you've got to budget your time because you can have time to play, time to eat, time to sleep, time to study, time to go to class. But you can do it all, but you've got to plan that out. Meet with your faculty. You might be doing super in some of your classes here. But when you get to college, you might run into some academic difficulty. So don't let those things snowball. Make sure that you talk to faculty members if you're running into some academic difficulty. And join those study groups. That's what they're there for. Like minds. Sometimes folks are going to be better in a subject area than you are. I think the hardest thing for college students, quite frankly, is learning to say no. So sometimes when your buddies are saying, come on, you don't have to study that chemistry test, let's go do something, you have to learn to say no and be okay with that. But I guess it's balance. Balance is important. We talked about that today in my session. You can do things outside the classroom. Inside the classroom is going to be important because I know your parents want you in and out in 4 years, right, parents? That's what I thought. Yeah, let me ask you something. How many of you have your own room at home? Oh, that was not going to last long. Okay, so when you get to college, compromise is really important. And that's difficult because you've never really had to compromise, particularly in your room. But now you're going to be in a very small room, right, guys? Very small room with somebody you don't even know. That's scary. Guys do well with it. They just draw the line in the sand and say, don't cross. Now, girls, on the other hand, I was in a session one time, this young woman on the first row said, she raised her hand, and she goes, Ms. Johnson, do you like match people up by size? I said, excuse me? She said, you know, so we can wear each other's clothes. I thought that was a novel idea, but we don't do that. You know, it's a compromise. It's different. How many of you students do your own laundry? Well, that's a few, but that's not enough. Okay, parents, you teach them to do laundry. And sometimes that's a really hard thing for parents, particularly mothers. You just don't want to let that go. It's a freeing experience if you'll do it. I had this one woman in my session, it's just the whole folding of the clothes and the towels. I said, it's a towel, it's okay. So, but you've got to teach your kids to do it. But once you do, you can sit back and do a lot of other things. So teach your sons and daughters how to do their laundry. The one thing students hate the most, and Belinda touched on this a little bit, is the B word, and that's budget. Because there is not just unlimited money. My girls used to think that, you know, you put the card in, you go to the bank, money comes out. But, you know, money doesn't come out if there's none in there. So you really have to be mindful of those really tough conversations. And parents, how many of you get your kids up in the morning? Anybody still do that? Well, that's good to know, because we do have parents that actually say to me, now who's going to get my child up? Well, I don't know where I don't know what resort you're at. But it's not me. The questions, we could spend all night just talking about questions that we all get. But the most important thing is be a sounding board for your sons and daughters. Find ways to communicate with them that are on their terms. You know, whether it be on Facebook, whether it be, you know, via your cell phone. This communication is going to change. It probably already has. But you've got to start now and having those family conversations about this process, letting them make mistakes, letting them fail. It's okay if we say no, you'll pick up and move on. But it's an exciting process and one that I hope you will enjoy the journey. But one piece of advice, parents, because so many of you raised your hands, that I could give you, you only have to remember 3 words, and I promise you it'll get you through this. It is drink more wine. And you got it.
Thank you all very much for being here. We now have time for questions and answers, and you can direct your questions to any of the panelists or just ask a general question. So whoever has a question, please raise your hand.
Where do you find FAFSA?
It is .gov. There is, if you just Google FAFSA, there is a .com site. Now, it's important to remember that first FAFSA.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
And then, if you're finished, I've got something.
Yeah, you go.
Okay. Yeah, it is FAFSA.gov, but it's very important when you go out there right now. Not on. Hello? There we go. When you go to FAFSA.gov, it's very important to pay attention to which FAFSA you're filling out, because there is the 2016-17 FAFSA, which is still going to be available for students who are currently enrolled in college right now. The one that you'll want to fill out if your child is going to go away to school, starts college in fall of 2017, is you want to do the 2017-18 FAFSA. And also, before you fill it out, I would recommend that you and your student go ahead and sign up for your FSA ID, that's FSA ID, because that is the ID that you're going to use to electronically sign the FAFSA. One parent and the student have to sign the FAFSA in order for it to be official. And that FSA ID is what you will keep and use each year when you renew your FAFSA. And again, it'll be for your student gets one, and then one of the parents. Both parents can get one, but only one parent needs to actually electronically sign the FAFSA.
The student loan crisis. What advice do you have that the students here don't end up as part of that statistic? And what sets your school apart from, let's say, the one that you're sitting next to, the person you're sitting next to, as far as dealing with students along their journey, their college journey, to make sure they don't become a part of that statistic?
Okay, so as far as the student loan crisis, we always encourage students only to borrow the amount of money that they need. And the federal government does limit the amount that a student can borrow. It's not a free rein that a student can borrow as much as they want to. They are capped each year in the amount that they can borrow. A freshman can only borrow $5,500. A sophomore can only borrow $6,500. And juniors and seniors can only borrow $7,500. If they borrowed each of those amounts for the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, their payments are going to be roughly about $220 a month at the current interest rate. And that if a student borrows from a private lender, that's where I think a lot of students get in trouble, and they borrow way too much money because they go through a private lender and they end up owing, $40,000 or $60,000. And that if a student is responsible in how they borrow, and if they take advantage of one of the different repayment plans, because the government does have multiple repayment plans for students. The standard plan is to pay their loan off in 10 years, but they can extend that to 25. If they're not making very much money, they can pay based on their income that they have. So those are ways to keep students in good check with their loan borrowing without going into default. What makes my institution different from these institutions is, we are a private school, we are quite expensive, we are over $60,000 a year to attend the University of Richmond. We are one of a small group of schools, 1% of schools in the country that meets demonstrated financial need, full demonstrated financial need of every student that has financial need. So we keep loan debt down for our students by giving them huge amounts of huge amounts of grant money, We gave over $66 million of grant money to our students this year. So that is how we're helping to keep it down at our institution. We also provide, loan counseling. We also provide counseling in terms of, what types of aid that they could be eligible for beyond what the university offers. We also encourage students to apply for different programs when they're going to go abroad to, again, get different monies and that. So we're constantly encouraging students and reminding them of options that are out there where maybe they could get some additional grant money to replace the loans that they might be taking at our institution.
How does a 529 affect financial aid awards?
A 520, it really depends on each institution how they treat that. Now, when you fill out the FAFSA, your 529, the total amount of your 529 plans for all of your children is reported as a parental asset. Now, if grandma and grandpa has a 529 that they're going to give to the child, you do not report that on the FAFSA. That's a third-party resource. At my particular institution, because we are private, it's a little bit different than how a 529 is treated at a public, because if you purchased a year's worth of tuition at a public, that's not a year of tuition at our institution. At our institution, it's dollar for dollar. If you have $5,000 in a 529 plan, it's worth $5,000. And it's just as if you had written a check. That's how it's applied. It doesn't affect the actual award for financial aid that we get, but what it does affect is the amount. It can bump your assets up depending on how large your 529 plan is.
Thank you.
How does, if I apply for financial aid and grant the financial aid, what happens with the financial aid if my daughter gets a scholarship?
Again, it depends on the institution. Some schools will just add it to their financial aid package because, again, not every school meets 100% of demonstrated financial need for that student. So there could be some unmet financial need and it can just be added on top. At our institution, we apply it towards any loan or work study a student might have to reduce their loan debt and that. Also, some schools, unfortunately, because they don't have huge budgets, there have been schools that I've encountered where if you get an outside scholarship, they're going to reduce any grant money they're giving the student. So again, it really depends on the particular school, what their packaging policy is.
My question is, if my son applied for, say, 10 schools and there are 35 schools accepted him, and I'm assuming that on the accepting letter, we will see the package of what financial aid is,
Not necessarily. It really depends on the school. At my school, if a student has a complete financial aid application, then they will get a financial aid letter with their admit letter. But if a student does not have a complete financial aid application, maybe we're missing a piece of information we asked for, they could get an admit letter without a financial aid letter. When both of my children applied to schools, some of the schools sent the financial aid information with the admit letters, and some of them did not. My older son actually got his financial aid letter from one school before he got his admit letter. And he said, they're offering me a scholarship, but they haven't admitted me yet. So am I in or not? And I said, oh, obviously they didn't coordinate very well with the mailing because 2 days later he got his admit letter and that. But it's not guaranteed that with an admit letter you're going to have a financial aid letter. It could come with the letter or a few days afterwards.